Welcome back to the Texas Business Broker, where we bring you Texas-sized insights for business brokers, advisors, and anyone involved in the world of buying or selling businesses. Today, I'm excited to spotlight an incredible organization that's changing lives through entrepreneurship. We're going to be talking about Owners in Honor, founded by Patrick Flood. It's dedicated to helping veterans and their families transition into business ownership, equipping them with the tools, resources, and connections they need to succeed. We're going to talk about what makes veterans outstanding business owners and the unique support that Owners and Honors provides to those veterans, and how business brokers, advisors, and communities across Texas can get involved. And yes, we'll also touch briefly on the new partnership between Owners and Honors and the Texas Association of Business Brokers, which creates even more opportunity for collaboration. So let's dive in and learn a little bit about Patrick's journey and what led him to create Owners in Honor.
And today we are here with Patrick. Patrick, thank you for having us.
Thank you for having me, Josh.
Yeah. Today we are actually in a little bit different studio. We are up in Dallas at the Texas Association of Business Broker Conference, so it should be a fun weekend for both of us.
Yeah.
Before we dive into the show and dive into Owners in Honor, why don't you take a moment, tell us about your background, tell us about Owners in Honor and how this thing even became.
Yeah, so I'll try to keep it brief because I've, in my short number of years, I've lived, it feels like a lot of different chapters of a book. But really, I'm originally from Wisconsin, a small town in Wisconsin, and went to college out in D.C., did ROTC because my parents weren't in a financial position to be able to pay for myself or my older brother to go to college. He went to the military academy at West Point. And so did ROTC, came from a background of veterans who were also business owners, third generation American. But my grandfathers both bought businesses and operated them. They both served, one in the Army Air Corps, the other one in the Navy. And then my dad served in both the Navy and the Army, and then was a business owner himself for about 40 years. I then went into the Army, served a little bit in the Army Reserve, and then in 2001, because there was a voluntary recall program in the Army, I came back in. This is actually before September 11th. To do 12 months, and then I thought I was going to complete my obligation and be done. As it was, the nation, called me to service for a little bit longer than that, and I wanted to stay in until really the war was complete. So I started out as a communications officer, did one rotation to Afghanistan, one to Iraq as a communications officer at the very beginning of both wars, and then went to Special Forces Assessment and Selection, became a Green Beret, and then served as a Special Forces officer for the remaining 22 years of my career.
Nice. Well, thank you for your service, first of all.
Yeah, thanks. I didn't get to the business part.
Yeah.
And then I went to Duke for business school, and then I worked at Anderson Financial Institution for 3 years. And then when I was there, I felt a bit unfulfilled with what I was doing after having left something that had such a profound impact of my ability to serve. And so I started working with the Veterans Affinity Group, helped found it or grow it at Anderson, and that didn't really satisfy it. And then ended up working within a veteran transition organization called the Honor Foundation as one of the corporate sponsors, and then had an opportunity to go to their corporate and / entrepreneur night, which is really kind of where this idea started taking hold.
Let's talk about this idea because I have been blessed to be able to see it grow for the last year or so, and I think it's been pretty cool. So for those who don't know, what is Owners in Honor? What is the gap that you're filling in the atmosphere right now?
Yeah, so we're a veteran nonprofit, 501c3, structured like a socioeconomic enterprise. So we are focused on helping a disadvantaged group, which are considered veterans, especially post-transition, that are interested in either buying, growing, or selling their business. My story in particular really starts with, unfortunately, my brother's suicide. So I had a younger brother commit suicide in 1998, and that eventually compelled my father to sell his business. My dad lived in a rural area in Wisconsin and didn't have an astute advisor to be able to help him sell the business, and really got a fraction of what it was worth. And that just compounds the tragedy that had already sort of happened in our family. And then what I became aware of as we started getting into really considering how do we mitigate risk for veterans who are interested in buying businesses.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of and you're a broker, so this isn't meant as a dig on any brokers, but the broker ecosystem is not necessarily homogenous. And so there's one, I don't believe in hyperbole, so I'm not going to throw all brokers under the bus, but there are some that I would say border on predatory behaviors.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Worst case scenario was a veteran that we became acquainted with who had spent about $115,000, $5,000 a month for one LOI a month, M&A on top of that on LOIs that when you did forensics, probably none of the LOIs were actually appropriate for what he actually needed to buy or could buy.
Mm-hmm.
And from that, ended up getting divorced and had some other personal issues, I think, that came from it. So for us, it's that we really wanted to be able to structure an organization that wasn't necessarily for the 1% of veterans that are getting out, are capital ready, have a big group of advisors, are able to then maybe go to a business school, especially a top tier business school that connects them to funded searches and then allows them to really mitigate a lot of risk in the process of it. So our organization is really focused on the other 99% and folks that really do have the attributes that would lead to being a positive entrepreneur, but they don't know enough about it, so they need education. They need a little bit of advisory services to make sure that they succeed, especially the first time out.
Yeah.
And then our goal eventually culminates in where this really started for me, which is making sure that veteran businesses, regardless of the size, are able to exit at a higher multiple so that wealth that they've accrued within the asset that they've built, that is their company and their livelihood, and a lot of times directly impacting their community, is something that can continue in a positive way.
OIH, right? That's the acronym, that you guys go off of. Helps veterans transition into business ownership. And I think that's a pretty big distinction. There are a lot of groups out there that help veterans start businesses, and yours is distinctly different in the fact that you are working around education, training, and support for those veterans wanting to buy a business. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And so why is it that you felt the need to help more veterans buy than plug in with one of the existing services that help veterans start businesses?
Sure. Well, just looking at it from a financial standpoint, I had the opportunity to attend a halfway decent university called Duke, Fuqua School of Business. And I didn't really understand it, quite frankly, as a service member, that there was such a distinction between venture capital and private equity. And that's really probably the biggest distinction, is that venture capital is high risk, high reward. Private equity is ideally mitigated risk and then consistent reward, so the buy them build kind of strategy. And for us, it seemed to me that for what veterans go through as far as psychological distress post-transition, that's something that was a little less risky and less like trying to play the lottery. And also, the other thing too is that the veteran organizations that exist in the startup space are excellent. So why on God's green earth would I create another one of those organizations to be able to do that? Instead, what we looked at is a gap within the system. And there's a couple other organizations that do help veterans buy businesses. Ours is unique in the sense that it's an education platform that then allows them to self-assess and self-actualize when they are ready to go to market. So the differentiator being, we're not an accelerator, we're not a boot camp, we are not a short-term program that gives people a lot of information in a short period of time, picks the winners, and then funds them. What we are is a long-term, really education platform that then provides advisory services, so that then once they determine that they're ready for market and they build a good buy box, then our discriminators for them to be able to go to market and meet a broker and waste their time not. So be able to get there and say, hey, I'm already capital ready. I have a note from a bank. I'm already approved. I know where my geography is. I know the size business I need. And here's my timeline. And then it's a matter of availing those brokers to our list of buyers, anonymized, so that we're not allowing them to connect to them directly, because we do want to coach them. Is that then we want to make sure that the business owner really is the customer of the broker is the business owner is knowing that potentially the very first person they meet is going to buy their business.
Yeah.
Because they're ready to go.
The big attraction for us as business brokers and why I felt such a need to get y'all plugged in with the Texas Association of Business Brokers and the International Association of Business Brokers is we are inundated with buyers right now. When we take a listing to market, we're looking at 60 to 90 inquiries within inside of 30 days. And a lot of those buyers are not well vetted. They don't know what they're doing. They're paying for some social media course and things like that. And so the buyers that you are putting through a very rigorous education system, when they do come and speak to our advisors on a listing, it's great to know that they know what they're doing, they're ready to go, and they have a support system to help walk them through. So especially here in Texas, there is no real buy-side representation for those people. And so most buyers come in unrepresented and they have no clue what they're doing. And that's fine. We're used to it as brokers. And so we're doing a lot of double education. So you're also lightening the workload for us as brokers, which is greatly appreciated.
That's right.
Let's talk about veterans specifically. What makes them, I would say, more uniquely qualified than just your average Joe out there to be a business owner?
Sure. Well, I'll use one sort of example that kind of covers the whole gambit, and then I'll go into the list of the alliteration that's easy to remember. But principally, in the military, we are a part of an institution that's going to outlast any of us and has lasted way before we got there. So our job is really, as leaders within the military, is to steward whatever unit and whatever size unit we have, and then to be able to develop, coach, and mentor the people that are underneath us to succeed after us. What's interesting about that, as difference to the startup world versus acquisition world, is that in the startup world, you're kind of creating for something from scratch. It can be whatever you want it to be. That's also very daunting for someone who's never done it before. But in the acquisition world, you're looking at taking something that someone else has led, knowing that they've probably done it to the best of their ability, but there's maybe some things that could have been improved. A lot of times it's because technology has changed. They've been making enough money. There's no reason for them to change anything. Or they're aging out, or they've sort of taken their hand off the wheel a little bit.
Yeah.
And we want to be able to have our veterans come in and be able to steward that legacy business to make sure that that legacy business owner feels that the thing that they've been working at and creating and the investment that they have in the human capital actually in that business, and more often than not, the community itself is benefiting from the fact that someone else is coming in who wants to be in that community, who then wants to be able to steward a business that they know that they're not even going to own forever. They're also going to pass it on to somebody, ideally virtuous circle, another veteran. And then the other stuff that is more the alliteration is that veterans are curious by nature. We always have to learn stuff. There's a lot of things that are laid out as far as structure for us, but then there's a lot of times that we're in very ambiguous environments, especially combat, where you have to kind of be extraordinarily creative. And then they are coachable, which I think, to your point, some of those buyers that are coming out, I think the challenge is that they've read and I don't want to denigrate any of it, but they've read a couple books, they've seen podcasts, they've maybe gone through a course, and they know everything. And they don't have the deference, partially because they can't vet, because they're only going to do this maybe one time in their entire life.
Yeah.
The broker that they're working with, the banker that they're working with, any of it. And so what ends up happening is that you end up a lot of times having friction between the banker, the broker, the seller, and it's not nice. And so the interesting thing about veterans is that we are highly coachable, because we have been in situations where we have not known what is going on or what is happening. And therefore we try to pull in as much information as possible to be able to make the best decision possible, knowing for a fact that, going to another attribute, is that courageousness is also a character of veterans. And courageousness is really being able to act in the presence of risk. So one of the things that we do a lot of times is we risk mitigate. So we identify a risk, we mitigate it to an acceptable level, and then we still execute. We do not negate risk. We minimize it to an acceptable level, and then we still execute. And so that's, in my opinion, courageousness. The other thing that's interesting about veterans is they're committed to community. So as a former recruiting battalion commander in Army recruiting, we identified the fact that over 80% of veterans would like to return to their home of record, wherever they entered the service from. Less than 30% do. And more often than not, it's because they can't connect the economic dots to be able to get back home.
Yeah, you hit on community, and I think it's important for the average person out there to know, when we talk about M&A and deal, if you're not in the ecosystem, it sounds big, but the reality is 80% of business owners are making under $1 million a year.
Yeah.
And that is community businesses. It's
Yep.
your mom and pop shop.
Yep.
It's not some big corporation. And that's what these people are trying to buy.
Yeah.
And
they
sell.
have local customers. They have local suppliers a lot of times. And then, as you may or may not know, the tax structure is set up so that almost all of them tithe.
Mm-hmm.
So almost all of them give 10% of their profit to the community because it's in their best interest.
Yeah.
So those athletic booster dinners that are sponsored by the local construction company, the travel gymnastics team or women's lacrosse team, all of that stuff is generated from those small businesses.
Yep. What are some of the biggest challenges that you see facing veterans right now that are out there trying to buy businesses?
Start out with the macro challenge. The macro challenge is that anybody who has served in the military, is the likelihood of someone who's 1 degree or 2 degrees away from them serving in the military is tremendously higher.
Mm-hmm.
Entrepreneurship is the same way. So the likelihood that I'm going to be an entrepreneur if I have a family member who is an entrepreneur is extraordinarily high. Unfortunately, there's a lot of veterans who don't have entrepreneurship in their family. And so the numbers as they have been talked about is that post-World War II, it's like almost 50% of businesses in the United States, it's like 40 some odd percent, were owned and operated by veterans. And now it's less than 5.
Wow.
And so that's the biggest one, is really getting, and it's quite frankly, it's very similar to the recruiting problem that happens for the U.S. military, is that we need to acquaint people with it and demystify it as much as possible by having bridge builders in the process of it, people that have done both, veterans who have been business owners who are like, hey, I look like you. Just like in recruiting, we typically recruit for someone that looks like them.
Yeah.
Because then they can identify the fact and they have a bias to succeed, knowing that someone who looks like me, who comes from my socioeconomic background, has succeeded in that field. The other things that I think are challenging sometimes to veterans is that, access to capital. So when you spend most of your life in as a W-2 employee, you have modest savings, maybe you have a thrift savings plan, which is like the Army or the military's version of the 401k.
Mm-hmm.
But you typically don't have a great deal of wealth that's going on. And so that's a bit challenging. So it comes to then working with really good banking partners. So either the 3 national banks that we work with, First Internet, Huntington, and Live Oak, are great. We have great connections with them, and they're very creative in how they come. They come to the table of financing. If one can't do it, another might be able to. But then also connecting to local credit unions and regional banks, which a lot of times will provide a totally differentiating product to the veteran to be able to help sit down, have a cup of coffee with them, which is sometimes what veterans like, instead of having someone who's maybe not in their locale and talking to them over video teleconference or Zoom about the same basic thing. The other part is veterans, if, it's often talked about that your focus is the men in the mission, right? So if for 20 years you've been focused on the men in the mission, have you really learned that much about business? Where's your network? To your point, like M&A is really small once you get into it and you realize everyone knows everyone. But if you've never known any of them, it feels like it's a different planet. And so once you're in it, you realize like half the people at this, like the conference we're about to go to, it turns out I know like a dozen people.
Yeah.
And I wasn't expecting to, but they're like, oh, are you here? And I was, yeah, I'm here. But when I was serving, my focus was, being able to prepare the service members that were underneath me to be lethal and survivable. And any of my spare time was spent making it more so possible for them. I did not have a second job. And I would say, if you look at the very top, like the tier 1 units, like the ones that are often talked about with, big operations like Bin Laden or whatever, those guys have done nothing but prepare to do exactly the best thing in the world because they're the best at it. When they transition out, how are they going to know somebody or understand how the process? And in the meantime, they're some of the most capable human beings on the planet. So for us, it's that we want to be able to steward them and to mentor them to the point that they don't need us anymore, and they can tell us to beat it, and we'll be a short phone call away. Similar to, I would imagine, once my child is old enough, this is going to happen to me. It's going to be like, hey, Dad, I got it. And I'm going to be like, roger that. And but in the meantime, I'll always be a phone call away.
You hit on what my next question was going to be, is how is OIH stepping in to help fulfill those? And you actually hit on one of the key pieces that I want to point out, and it's that relationship piece, right? So the 3 banks that you mentioned, if you're not in the industry, they don't have retail branches. They're not depository banks. These are banks that are specifically built to do business transactions. And so I think that's a great piece that OIH and you are stepping in and building those relationships with those bankers to say, hey, here's how you get a loan to buy a business. I mean, that is a drastically big piece in this. You don't need $1 million cash to buy $1 million business. It's you just need a down payment and a good bank to work with you. So either expand on that, or what are some of the other relationships or ways that OIH is stepping in to support the gaps that those veteran buyers are hitting? Yeah,
so what essentially you talked about is also the lack of experience in the M&A world could potentially lead you to a predatory vendor. And our goal to mitigate risk is to be able to vet people. Like those 3 banks that we mentioned, the national SBA lenders, I know first and last name and their personal cell phone numbers. If something goes wrong, I'll give them a call.
Yeah.
Vice versa. Like there was just something that recently came up, that there was an issue with one of the banks that we had messed something up. And so they called us and we fixed it immediately, because that's the sort of relationship we have with them. And what's great is that it's funny because we have panels and they're all kind of competitors, but there's so much opportunity out there that they're all sort of frenemies.
Yeah.
And they all have, and this is something that a lot of people I think don't understand, is that each bank has a unique credit thesis, and the underwriters underwrite risk totally differently. And there are sometimes red lines for each of the lenders that isn't advertised on like a web page.
Correct.
And if you don't have a relationship with them, you could potentially apply for a loan, get a rejection letter, and have no context.
Yeah.
And now that rejection letter's on your list because you got a hard look at your credit.
Yep.
And now you're going to go look at a different bank that might be the right bank, but now you already have a rejection. They're going to ask you about the rejection. And so the less that we can have those things happen, because we're getting them to the right bank the first time, or the right couple banks, then they can choose their own bank that they want to, and then they can choose their own type of banking relationship.
Yeah.
Do they want someone that they can go get coffee with? Do they want someone that they can get on the phone? It depends on the veteran, and every veteran is different.
Yeah.
And then the other part too is that we're connected to that allied service provider network that you had talked about, and that mitigates really sort of that second risk of the opportunity cost that comes along with lack of experience. So opportunity cost is what? So it's measured in the amount of time that it takes me to identify a problem, find a solution or find a vendor, vet a vendor, get the right vendor, have either myself or the vendor solve the problem. And in the business world, that can take, for an unexperienced operator, up to 18 months. And so when you're looking at the J curve, and you're trying to, the J curve meaning, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, post-acquisition, a lot of times veteran or businesses dip in profitability. And so one of the reasons for that is the inexperience that comes along with, once you're in the business in the first 100 days and you open up the hood and you realize that you missed maybe some things in diligence, or you underassessed its importance, that now you got to get someone to fix it. And what are you going to do? Go to Google? And so that's typically what ends up happening for the first-time business owner. They go to what used to be the Yellow Pages, and they find probably the first one, AAA or quadruple A plumbing, and they're trying to bring them in to solve their problem. And then it's trial by error. You find a vendor, it doesn't work. You find another vendor, it doesn't work. Yeah. And then you're losing profitability during that entire period. If you have vetted vendors, you can minimize that opportunity cost, sometimes as short as 6 months. So that's a huge amount of money and time that then creates profitability faster, which then allows the veteran or the business owner in this case to be able to then pay down debt or become much more liquid faster and have better cash flow instead of having to wait for that to happen. So for us to be able to vet and then have allied service providers, every allied service provider provides us somewhat different discounts, but they all provide discounts to veterans. And then they all provide free assessments. So fractional marketing firm, fractional CFO, fractional HR, fractional, you name it. We have people that we can connect to people. And then they get the veterans, when they're actually operating the business, get a small business advisor from us that is connecting to them. So if there's ever a translation issue, that veteran is learning really almost 3x speed because he has a consistent small business owner who's experienced in doing this before, teaching him as it's happening instead of just waiting for a crisis and then responding to the crisis.
That is a massive undertaking that you guys are putting on and building that support network. But it's what every business owner, veteran or not, really needs to be successful. So it's great to see that you guys are putting together that network for veterans. You know, you're up here talking with me on the Texas Business Broker and all of that. So what role is it that we as business brokers can do to step up and support OIH and support veterans in this process? Sure.
So obviously the biggest thing for a buyer is deal flow. And a lot of it was, I mean, quite frankly, the candor that you have had so far, even with us, is to say, look, as a broker, these are the things that waste my time. And we said, Roger that. Let's make sure the veteran shows up to you with those things solved, or at least 85% solved, so that you can save time. So it's a dual value proposition, because we may not be coming in. Well, likely we're going to be coming in with an SBA loan. So looking at it, the metaphor being the hot housing market and coming in with a VA loan, some sellers really wanted a cash offer, and they wanted a high cash offer. They wanted multiples above whatever they listed it for. Given enough time, if they have a good broker, if they have a good exit planner, more often than not, the seller is not motivated by money. They're motivated by handing over their legacy to someone who they think is going to take care of it and take care of, you know, Agnes at the front desk, who's been working there for 20 or 30 years, who, if a cutthroat organization comes in, is going to be one of the first cuts because she's a little bit older, she's, et cetera, et cetera. And it seems like just excess overhead. But in the meantime, that business owner who just sold his business still goes to the same church, goes to the same grocery store. It's not like they retired to Florida. So now they're having to look at these employees that they just sold the business to someone who's maybe a bit of a mercenary, and they're going to have to look them in the face at the grocery store and at church and be able to say, "I'm sorry." And that's tough. And what's interesting about it is that it's very similar to the story that my dad told me about. He sold his business and, again, didn't get the help I think that he needed, and sold it for a much lower valuation, and then was put on an unenforceable contract, quite frankly, that he didn't. There's a difference between illegal and unenforceable. But he, being a veteran, is a rule follower. And so he was like, well, this is the way it's going. So what ended up happening is that 2,500 patients that he'd had, because he ran a clinic, suddenly didn't have primary medical care. And he was, having a really difficult time looking in the face at church and at the grocery store. And he felt like he'd failed them. And in a smaller way, I would say, I'm obviously emotionally tied to that. But in a smaller way, and you represented dozens of businesses sold, in your assessment, would that be the case? That most of them were like, I got to save face to my community. I cannot sell this to someone who doesn't care about my employees or my community.
It is crazy, but you kind of hit on one of the key things that we try to educate everyone on, is this isn't a real estate transaction. And the story matters. The story from the seller matters. The story from the buyer matters. And we all have to come together and pitch that story to the bank. And it is kind of one of the fun things that make our industry unique and fun for me, is that the buyer's individual story matters. And we actually get to go present a story to the lender, to the underwriters, to the seller, to everyone, on why we believe that this buyer is a perfect buyer to help this business grow and to carry it on. And especially when you get into those smaller transactions And I say smaller because when you dip in the M&A, there's all sorts of sizes, everything up to publicly traded. But the mom and pop transactions, those family businesses, they 100% want Aunt Joan in the front office to be taken care of because she's not ready to retire. And a lot of times too, what we try to tell people is, look, if Aunt Joan has been sitting in the front office greeting people for the last 20 years, she's doing a little bit more than just greeting. She actually knows them. She knows why they're there. She knows what's happening. And it's not someone you want to get rid of anyway.
She's the one who prompts people to say so-and-so had a birth in their family. Like, it's the profound customer relation that actually is the differentiator in those businesses that are a lot of times legacy multi-generational businesses.
Yeah.
And the same thing goes for, even magnify the benefit of bringing in a veteran who is from that community back home. Most of those small business owners, extraordinarily patriotic.
Yeah.
Capitalism at the end of the day is the backbone of our society. Small business is the backbone of capitalism.
Yep.
And so for them to be able to bring someone who's been answering the call to defend the nation and freedom and quite frankly, capitalism for a couple of decades, bring them back home and have that be the person that they turn their business over to that has been benefiting from the support. So it's a thank you for your service X 100. It's incredible. And then to see that family benefit from it and then see that veteran commit dollars and time to the community we in the military have the most expensive leadership incubator in really the world. And no business school can replicate it. Now take that veteran and move them into a W-2 employee job at a large corporation. What impact is that person going to have? They're going to have some.
Yeah.
Probably, maybe more likely, more than the other employees. But you take that same person who's received multiple millions of dollars of leadership education, we bring them into a smaller community, and that could even be in a big city, but in a smaller community within that big city, and their benefit and their impact in that city is going to be exponential.
So I think you hit on the key piece that we as brokers can provide, and that's the deal flow, right? And so we're on that front line of talking to the business owners who are looking to sell and, putting those up on the TABB website and identifying them as that, because we'll kind of tap in on our little partnership that we're working more towards. But we as business brokers work a lot with CPAs, bookkeepers, financial advisors, investment bankers, and other people. How can we engage them, or how can they engage to also participate and help?
There's multiple ways. One of the great ways is, so we have wealth advisor roundtables that we have within communities, typically the same place we would have we call it a veteran ETA day zero at a university, so business schools. We're going to be doing one as a part of the Texas CTA conference that's coming up at Rice pretty soon. So we'll do a wealth advisor roundtable, and the wealth advisor roundtable is really to engage everyone in the exit planning process for the most part, because you'll bring in estate attorneys and tax planners and everyone else, because those wealth advisors are usually part and parcel to all of them.
Yeah.
And we'll help them understand what makes us unique as a nonprofit, and then also the benefit to their clients. So it's not just create a donor advised fund, give us money, please help us. It's really help us provide value to your clients. And as a offshoot of doing so, there's a bunch of advantages of working with a nonprofit that's actually going to receive common shares of the company to be able to minimize capital gains and a lot of other things in order to ensure that those veterans have the advisory support that they can get into the future. And then from that, being able to say, hey, I am a broker, or I am a brokerage office that is interested in getting your monthly buyer bulletin. So we have a buyer bulletin anonymized to the area, geography, size business, really required SDE, and then whether or not they've been approved for what size loan. And then we get those out to the brokers that want them once a month. And then ideally, when an opportunity comes up, you already have someone who's on the list that's already looking.
As we talk about it, I am currently the Vice President of the Texas Association of Business Brokers, and we're here at the TABB conference this week, and this is going to air much later, but that's what we're doing. So Let's talk about the fact that we were able to formalize a partnership between TABB and OIH. What is that look like, and how is that kind of playing out? How are we being able to help?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, it's going to the conference here, the state conference, and letting people know.
Yeah.
So, and then there's, TABB chapters all over the state. And not that, I live in Houston, so Texas first. And so we really want Texas and veterans because so there's three main states that have the highest concentration of veterans. It's California, Florida, and Texas. And we want to make sure that our neighbors, which is in Texas, are the ones that benefit probably the greatest amount. We are working with the other broker associations in the other states.
Yep.
But this is home, so I can literally get in my car and go visit you if I need to see if we could shake something loose. There's a chapter in most major cities.
Yep.
And then from that, be able to make sure that we're walking lockstep. If we do the conference that you're inviting us as a nonprofit, people understand what we're doing. And what's nice about it is that it combines two things. One, it's a veteran nonprofit, which I think in general, TABB has always been very kind to. And then second part is that it's a veteran nonprofit that quite frankly helps them generate business and better business flow.
Yeah.
So we approach this, and this is why we're a socioeconomic enterprise, we approached it as a business, is that we wanted to provide you value as much as all of our partners, as much as we gain value from you. We don't want a hand out, we want a hand up.
Yeah. 2 points on that. We at Lion definitely are seeing the value of qualified buyers stepping in and moving to the front of the line of that process. But for those who don't know, what we at TABB have agreed to provide is essentially business brokers can opt in and they will be identified as an OIH partner on the TABB website. And you are opting in because OIH represents buyers, you're opting in to help look at, facilitate, or provide guidance on 2 transactions a year. So if you're a business broker out there and you want to get plugged in, we'll provide a link at the bottom of this for you to go opt in on the TABB website. And one of the great things is TABB does have a code of ethics and education and all of that. And so we're actually asking you to reaffirm those things before that they plug in. So not only are we at TABB going to benefit from you guys educating buyers, but we're also going to hopefully be able to give back in a meaningful way to help support those buyers as they go through that process.
Rolling out in 2026, it's still, here's the preview of something that's going to be exciting coming out in, I think, January. That would be another value add to you, is that right now, registered in the United States is about 1.7 million veteran-owned businesses. It is estimated that there's probably 3 to 5x that are unregistered as veteran-owned businesses. So you're looking at maybe 6 million veteran-owned businesses. They have the same percentage of people that are going to be exiting as any other business. Those are all small businesses, so small business is generous, so under $50 million.
Yeah.
But a lot of them are actually those smaller businesses that we need. So virtuous circle, right? So we're rolling out an education platform for those sellers to be able to get free education to help them understand, why do you get a broker? What's the difference if you get a brokered deal versus an unbrokered deal? Yes, you're going to have to pay a broker, but what's the advantage of multiples when it comes to it? Why would you get an exit planner? Why would you get a wealth advisor? Why would you get a tax planner? Why would you do all that stuff? And then anyone who is willing to partner with us needs to provide a discount for our veterans because we're nonprofits. We have to provide a market differentiator to be able to refer someone. But ultimately, we aren't gaining that business. We want to get those veterans the help that they need to make sure that they get the highest multiple possible on exit. And therefore, brokers on the sell side are ideally going to benefit from it as well, because we're going to be advocating for more brokers to be able to represent businesses that are being sold by veterans and connecting them to the people to help them sell them.
As we wrap up here, if there are any veterans that are out there listening that are looking at buying that aren't plugged in with you guys yet, what's the first step for them? How do they get plugged in with OIH?
So there's 2 ways. One's the probably more painstaking way, which is contact me on LinkedIn. So Patrick Michael Flood. So I do.
We'll link to that.
Yeah, I do So I went to a great transition organization called the Honor Foundation. They do something called Cups of Coffee. So you're in the program, I think it's 16 weeks, and you do 50 cups of coffee. So since that program, I probably do 6 to 8 cups of coffee a week, which are like anywhere between 20 and 30-minute meetings with people.
Yeah.
Sort of real short discovery meetings. And a lot of times the people will call me because they know I'm going to get them to the right place. They may not be someone that we can even help, but I can get them to a different transition organization. I can get them to the right veteran entrepreneur organization that's doing startup if that's what they want to do, et cetera. So that's one way to do it. That's obviously the most painstaking because eventually my box on LinkedIn is going to be enormous. The second way that's maybe more efficient would be to go to our website, so www.ownersandhonor.org. And on it, there is a tab in the very top that says buy a business. There's also a tab in the very top that says sell a business. And then lastly, there's a tab on the top that says donate. So, or partner with us.
Yeah.
And so if you're interested in buying a business, you'll click on that. There'll be a form that you'll fill out. That form will generate an email, which will then generate an interview, and then we'll verify the fact that you're eligible for the program. And then we'll talk to you about, the timeline of you being actually accessed into the buyer's base camp. If you're a seller, a little bit more mechanical, a little bit less process-based because we don't have quite as many sellers contacting us.
Yeah.
More often than not, we actually refer them out to somebody. Is that seller contacts us, they fill out a sheet, and then we determine whether or not it's something that we can connect someone directly within our own program, or is it something that we actually do need a broker to be able to help them get out, in which case then we refer them to brokers in their local area. And then, I'm sure you're going to ask this, how could people help otherwise?
Yeah.
But, so time, treasure, and talent. Time, treasure, and talent, what do those things mean? So time, we're always looking for interns, volunteers, people that are interested in the process, like veterans, like small businesses, like America. Those are great people. There's a lot of opportunity within any nonprofit to volunteer or to be impactful in your community.
Yeah.
We're always looking at when we do opportunities within areas, we're looking for places to host stuff. We're looking for universities that are interested in partnerships with us to be able to engage their business students, especially their veteran business students, to be able to make sure we're delivering that. We're working on right now a process with SMU here in Dallas to make sure that we can provide it to there, and also Texas A&M Fort Worth. So we're working along with one of our banking partners to see if we could roll something out next spring there. And then treasure, that's the obvious, is that we're a nonprofit, and so we have 3 revenue streams, 2 of which have to do with charity and donation. So charity is us raising money and doing some sort of charitable event. Donation is literally someone donating either in-kind services or finances to us. There's a great way to do it, especially for those people who are exiting businesses. You have a wealth event.
Yeah.
You're going to get hammered by capital gains tax. The government has been wonderful in the fact that they give you a lot of tax deferments or ways to be able to then be charitable in your giving. And then setting up a donor advised fund is a great way to do that. And then, partnerships. So time, talent. So we're at talent. So talent is those allied partnerships that we're talking about. So whether you're a regional corporate insurance company or a different regional brokerage office that is interested in engaging us, we're all over the United States. We're headquartered in Houston, but we have events all over the United States.
Wait, did you say you're not using Lion exclusively?
We don't. So it's funny that you mentioned that. So there have been, and we may be leaving money on the table by doing it, but we have in a specific clause in all of our relationships that is non-exclusive.
Perfect.
And the reason is we want to make sure the veteran gets the right person, because not you're perfect for the perfect customer.
Yep.
But you may not be. And within the M&A world, there are people that just aren't a good fit.
Yeah.
And you don't want them not to get service. You want them to still be able to get help, because that's going to help you gain credibility with maybe a frenemy competitor-ish. And so it's the same thing. So we talk, whether it's banks, whether it's allied service providers, whether it's wealth advisors, we're like, hey, you can come to the party, but this isn't going to be the whatever your name a company is party.
Yeah.
It is going to be, you can sponsor modules of education. You could do other things to be able to make it so that your name is known and that you're known as a subject matter expert in your area of expertise. And that's great, tangential marketing for you, but we're not going to funnel anybody to a single organization or capital provider.
Perfect. And that's honestly, too, one of the reasons that we loved it, and we plugged you in with TABB, not just Lion. And, it's funny you hit on the relationship aspect. So we tell sellers every time my team kind of laughs is when we finish a meeting, I tell them, I go, one more thing. I am going to be in your business for a year. You got to make sure you want to work with me.
Yeah.
And it's okay if you don't, right?
Yeah.
And so it is really important. The relationship aspect of M&A is actually really a really key piece in what gets deals done and what gets them done well. And it goes for the same for buyers. You need to have you need to be able to build a relationship with whoever it is that you're going to work with there.
Yeah,
So,
I think that, whether it's exit planner or brokerage advisor, relationship, it's never going to be taken over by AI.
yeah.
Because this is a very human process that's extraordinarily tied to emotion. And I can't imagine, like, you'll be enabled by AI, of course, but
Yeah.
to make you help you make better decisions in a shorter period of time, and maybe even handle more clients.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day,
It's still a relationship.
it's just like talking to a recruit sitting across the kitchen table from a 17-year-old and their parents, having an honest to God human connection, telling that family you're going to take care of their kid.
As we wrap up here, what is one key takeaway that you can leave for us business brokers on the role that veterans play in business ownership?
I think it's that, one, we need you. We are active, just like I talked about the curiosity and also the coachability. We are an active learning organization. We want to be a legacy product ourselves, one that outlives my tenure as CEO and president of the board. And so we want to learn and be the best in process as possible. So any feedback we can get is always helpful. Any way that we can get people across the line better is helpful. The M&A space is constantly evolving.
Yeah.
There's changes to the SBA rules all the time. Anytime that someone can say, hey, I want to be your partner because I want to be your friend. And as we build out our organization, we do have regional collaboratives where it's really a cohesive unit within a city. So you're part of the Austin one, but there's one in Dallas, there's one in Houston, there's one in Atlanta, there's one in other cities where we have a preponderance of veterans and a preponderance of allied service providers that want to jump on board and be able to see if they can work together and make something happen.
So if you were looking to support Owners in Honor, you can visit ownersinhonor.org. That's ownersinhonor.org. We will link to Patrick's LinkedIn, to the website, to everything there. If you're a broker or an advisor, the TABB website is going to have every resource you need to get plugged in. And thank you for joining us on another episode of the Texas Business Broker. Continue closing deals, everyone.
At Lion Business Advisors, selling a business is not just a transaction. You've poured your heart and soul into your business. It's not just a paycheck, it's your legacy. The team at Lion Business Advisors is here to guide you through the process, ensuring your successful exit. Contact the team at Lion Business Advisors at 800-525-3542. That's 800-525-3542, or visit us at lionbusinessadvisors.com. Lion Business Advisors. Let the story of your next chapter begin with us.